Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. This is a strange wish list, because this is the wish list that I wish I'd done earlier in life. And maybe I can do some of those things later, but yeah, reflecting over the whole orchid thing with my daughter over the weekend, and you know how things evolved and all that sort of stuff. The first thing is, I wish I had the knowledge I've got now when I started my collection, because that would mean there'd be quite a lot of plants that I've got that I wouldn't have for a start. And like many people, when they start a collection, you go mad. Yeah, well, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't gone mad and bought everything with a pretty flower on it and brought it home, and in some cases to die, and in other cases to struggle, and in other cases to do very well. So you have to look at the positive side of life. But yeah, I wish I'd had my knowledge 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago, come to think of it. But you can't change things like that. I believe I have enough knowledge now to look after what I've got. That's good. And if I think about it rationally, if I started this collection earlier in life, I wouldn't have had the information available to me that I've got now. You know, thanks to the likes of YouTube, the internet in general, some of the bigger American orchid societies posting care information and all things. That wouldn't have been around that long ago. And I'd have been limited by books. And as you know, my opinion on books is varied. I'll leave it at the polite version, but it's just some of the information in the books is just out of date, and new ideas, new ways of thinking have come along, and not many books are getting written nowadays on orchid care. You know, it's very difficult to get a book published nowadays, and publishers will think, well, there's plenty of orchid books around, we don't need another one, so it's difficult to get that up and running. I've often thought about writing a book, but there's a bother factor, and I can't be. Yeah, so I wish I'd started the orchid thing earlier in life from the point of view. Well, one thing that may have been different, quite a few years ago I got into property, and at the time it was a brilliant idea. And I was basically setting myself up for retirement, I thought. And then, thanks to some unscrupulous characters, we had a property and financial crash. And it took me down. I had to declare bankruptcy. And quite honestly, since then, my worries have gone away. I know that sounds daft, but although I now have limited income, I've just got my pensions, I survive okay on that, you know. And I'm lucky, you know, this property doesn't belong to me, it belongs to my mum. She doesn't live here. And I live here rent-free. But obviously I'm limited to what I can do, because it's not my property. And therein lies another problem. One day, this property will have to be sold, and I'll have to get out. Yeah? I mean, it's an inevitable thing. We all get older. I think my mum's 88 this year. And, you know, things come to an end, and at such times this property will have to be sold, and I'll have to get out. And I don't know definitively what I will do at that point. I'm waiting for it to happen to worry about it, if you see what I mean. But I have some ideas. But what happens to this lot? You know, what happens to all this at that point in time? That's going to be difficult. I may have to sell virtually the whole collection and just keep a few of my very special plants in wherever I end up. And that may well be a choice of two things. In the back of my mind, I want to go to Spain. But depending on when I go, rules may have changed on just moving to Spain, which at the moment is not a problem, but it could be down the line. So it's put an air of doubt on that possibility. And temporarily I may need to find somewhere else in the UK while I get myself organised to actually go to Spain and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, there's the premises where this is. Now, if I'd stayed at my old house, that wouldn't be a problem because I owned it, you know, so that would be down to how long I last. And I had a purpose-built greenhouse there, specially made for me. I had money in those days. I haven't now. But yeah, so I'd like to have started the orchid thing a lot earlier in life. But at the point I started getting more serious about collecting the orchids, luckily information was readily available. The ability to sort out the good bits from the bad bits doesn't come immediately, but it does eventually if you're prepared to put a bit of work in. You know, if you can find 6 sets of information that say the same thing and one thing that says something quite different, you can sort of average it out and think, well, that one thing that says it different might be right and all the others might be wrong. But law of averages says probably not. But anyway, the other thing is I wish I hadn't gone mad and just bought in so many plants that at the stage I'm at now, I've got to get rid of some. You know, the workload is quite enjoyable most of the time, but sometimes it's tedious, and when it is, I think, what the hell am I doing with all these plants? I could be just as happy with half as many, quite honestly, and they'd all have a lot more room as well. But I'm working on that, but it's not a dramatic change. Things that I can't do. I would love to have artificial lighting and keep my plants growing in the UK winter, but I can't. You know, just stop and think, where would the lights have to go? You know, we'd need some all up round here, and then what happens to these mounts all up in the roof? Where do their lights go? And where do the lights go for the lower shelves? Think how many there would have to be. Think of the wiring. So I can't do that. I'd like to, but I can't. That's just how it is. That would make my plants better year round, but I can't do it. You know, so that's one thing I'd perhaps like, but just can't. The other thing, I'd like somebody to help now and again, to talk about the orchids during watering and, you know, all that sort of thing. But there's nobody I'd trust with my orchids apart from my daughter. And, you know, with her sort of disability, effectively she would struggle to do a lot. Certainly a lot at once anyway. It would have to be in small bits. But, you know, she's offered, if ever I want to go away for a period of time, especially if it's in the summer months, she's offered to come down and stay and at least look after the mounts for me. So, and I trust her to do that. She's been with me often enough, seeing me watering and everything like that, and she knows enough about orchids to know what to do. I wouldn't have to have a big explanation and written instructions and stuff. I also wish sometimes that more people could actually see my orchid collection, apart from through the lens of a camera. And apart from my daughter and my sister and brother-in-law, because they live just round the corner, and they have no interest in plants whatsoever. So they walk in here and go, oh yeah, and walk out again. That's their level of interest. But the only other person that's been in here is the vice chairman of the Orchid Society, because he came round to pick up some plants for one of our displays once. You know, and he sort of spent, he was busy at the time, he had lots of houses to visit to pick up plants, so he couldn't spend long here. But he had a look round and he said, you've got a lot of plants in here, you've used your space really well. And and then the fogger went up the back of his leg and he asked what that was, and I explained, and well, why does that just come on its own then? So I explained some of the gadgets, and he said, that's actually a good setup. You know, for what you've got in here, that obviously works well. But nobody else has ever been here and seen it. I wouldn't mind changing that. But yeah, there are things that we do and things that we buy, and you know, our environments and things that I'm sure some of us have got a wish list where we'd like things to, you know, to be a bit better or whatever. But my main thing, I wish I hadn't got so many plants in the beginning, because there's quite a few of those plants are on my to-go list now, and they're taking up space that I don't think they warrant. You know, you just you know, you go to a show, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have that, pretty blooms, I'll have that one. you know, and then you get them home and you sort of try and find a place for them, and then you realise some of them have got lousy roots and you've got some work to do to keep them alive and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I wish I'd never bought unhealthy plants. I know now, so I know not to do it. But I didn't. You know, in those days the knowledge wasn't there. I couldn't look at a plant and just say, no, I don't think so. I can just tell by looking at the plant that when that comes out of the pot there's going to be nothing in there apart from soggy media and no roots. Well, I think I can see that most of the time now, so I don't go down that road anymore. My wish list of new plants to get for this year is tiny, for obvious reasons. They'd have to have somewhere to go. So, you know, increasing my collection isn't really going to happen that much now. I'm more interested in decreasing it. Reduce the workload, gain more space for plants to grow into and have more airflow around them, because I know they will do better like that. So, you know, we all wish we could change things, and some things can be changed, you know, like, you know, if you're thinking, oh, I wish I had more humidity, well, there are ways of doing that, you know. Although it might be expensive, you could say, I wish I had more heat. That tends to cost money, getting heat, and there are places where people are growing orchids where I think they might be saying, I wish I had less heat. Well, again, relatively expensive, but there are ways of doing that. Quite honestly, if you struggle trying to keep temperatures down, then just keep the airflow up. You know, getting circulating fans and positioning them so that you can see your leaves gently moving will help them survive those hot times. I have to do it, even though I live in the UK. There's a lot of glass here, and like today, it's quite early in the day. It's not even 10 o'clock. I'm already up to 22 degrees. The foggers are kicking on and off. I need to get some water on the floor. And that's something I wish I'd done a long time ago, is get rid of that carpet and have a concrete floor. Even better when I get me thingies to stand on. But yeah, changes I would make if I could. I can't really do the lights. They'd end up getting in my way. So would the wires. I'd probably overload me electrics, and so I can't go down that road. And that's really about it out here, apart from the sheer number of plants which I'm working on reducing. And I'm going to feel better at the end of the day. So, yeah, we all wish for things, some of which we can never have. Yeah, well, it's still nice to imagine. Yeah? You know, I imagine a purpose-built orchid house. Yeah, but that could only be in a property I own, which is probably not going to happen in my time of life. But you know, I actually designed one when I used to live in my old property, and I thought, well, one day I may actually dig a pit, you know, and line it with insulating blocks and have steps down into it, you know, so that only half of it was actually above ground. And that helps keep it warmer in the winter, helps with humidity. You know, and it would have been designed and built for the purpose. And I bet you anything that after a couple of years it would have been too small. Can anybody happily say they've actually got enough space? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I've got stacks of room. Yeah, well, I can't. You can see I haven't got stacks of room. Anyway, today's a major watering day, plus some other chores. Yeah, I just thought I'd have a chat. We all wish for things, often, that we can't have. Well, sometimes you just make do with what you've got and do the best with what you've got. And that's all any of us can do. But aiming for the best you can do, I think, is a goal everybody should have and should work towards. Some goals are never achievable, but the closer you get, the better things are and the happier you are. So, I'll be happier when I've got less plants, and I'm working on it. And I'll get there, and any sickies get removed on the way. I've been a rescuer, but to a greater extent I no longer am. You know, I used to hate giving up on a plant, and nowadays I just sort of think, you're causing me time, you're causing me worries, and are you really worth it? is this plant really worth it? Well, the answer to some of those is yes, you are, and yes, I will do that work. But on some of them, I just sort of think, yeah, I went out to get some screwdrivers and came back with 2 orchids, you know, just because they had pretty blooms on. You know, so I can move a few on to other people. Any sickies are going out. Most of those are out already. But some of them are still lurking sickies, and they're having a little bit of a chance, shall we say, on the grounds that new growths are coming out. So if those look okay, at least I can sort of say the plant's, you know, in a state of recovery now that's not too bad. And even though I might not want to keep it, I would still be prepared for somebody else to give it a go. But I'm not letting anybody have sick plants. It's just not fair. I've already got one that I'm going to have to go and deal with. My Maxillaria arachnitiflora, which has always been an iffy plant. Well, it's now been declared a no-go. So the 2 splits that I've got of that plant are, well, they're in the halfway house of being thrown out. They're actually sat on the dining room table at the moment because I haven't got round to chucking them out, but they're going. But unfortunately, I sold one of those. Now I've got to find that person at the show on Saturday, tell them what's happened to mine and what I believe is wrong with them, and offer them their money back. It's only fair. You know, at the time, that was a halfway house orchid, and that particular one that I sold didn't look too bad. But if it came off the mother plant, you know, it was a split, the plant divided into 3, and my 2 are bad, well then that one is going to go, eventually. And I'd hate to think that I'd given somebody something or sold something and it affects some of their other plants. So I've at least got to make the offer and see what happens. Yeah, so have a wish list by all means, and include some plants on it, and include some changes to your growing environments, and work towards them. But don't get despondent because some things can't be achieved. Like I said, I can't grow very well in the winter in the UK. I can keep my temperature range suitable for what I've got, and for those that it's just too cold out here in the winter, they come in the house. Well, I'd like not to be able to do that, but if I keep it warm enough out here for those plants, my resting dendrobiums won't rest. Yeah? So, oh, I would love 2 separate growing spaces then. You know, one that I can keep nice and warm, and one that I can allow to cool down. But then I've got 2 places to go, 2 places to water, 2 lots of water to set up, carrying stuff from one to the other. So, although it sounds like a nice idea, in practice it would drive me up the wall. So I'm quite happy that soon to be all my plants will be out here. Those that I don't want will be gone. And I'll work on what's left. And I'll try and do my best with what I've got. And I want that number of plants to be an amount less than it is now. So as I say, I'm working on it. I'm being a bit harsh at times, but it's for my own well-being. You know, like today, it's already nearly 10 o'clock in the morning. It's been warm enough in here to work for some considerable time, and I haven't started yet. At the moment, it's because I've got the camera in my hand. But I need to get started. I've got a lot to do out here today, and the sooner you start, the sooner you end, and the more breaks you can have and all that sort of stuff, and you don't run out of daylight and all those sorts of things. But sometimes that urge to really crack on just can't be summoned. You just can't get going, and this is going to be one of them days, I think. But as soon as I start, I'll be fine. The old knee was a bit creaky coming down the old apples and pears this morning. But walking about, standing and all that, I've been experimenting, and today it seems okay. So obviously the rest it had did it the world of good. But I don't want to set it off again, so if it starts twinging or anything, whatever I needed to do today can wait. But I've already waited a whole day. I do need to get going out here. So yeah, things we could change and would love to do, but we can't. Well, if you can't, cross them off your wish list and stop worrying about them. And worry about the things you can change and get round to them eventually. without rushing and panicking and doing all that sort of flipping stuff. The buds on this Prima Donna are opening. So these are the first ones to open on last year's canes. The mass of blooms in the main are the previous year's canes, filling in the gaps that they didn't use this time last year. But the other blooms are opening. Well, I've got a Orchid Society meeting Friday evening. That's the Bournemouth Orchid Society. I may well take it along. And I've also got a show on Saturday, which is the Wessex Orchid Society, and I may well take it along to that as well. It is a good plant, you know, it's got good healthy leaves on it, it's grown well in the previous year, and shows signs that it was also grown pretty well the year before, because judges love to look for progression. What they don't like to see is plants standing still or going backwards. They like to see a progression, you know, things getting better. Well, that one certainly has, and it has got a hell of a lot of blooms on it. So I think we may well take that one along. I don't think I'll be taking much else. I mean, these are gorgeous blooms, but they're not backed up by a gorgeous plant, unfortunately. But yeah, and the fragrance on this is gorgeous. It smells of freesias, and it's strong as well. You know, I'm standing whatever, a foot, 2 foot away from it, and I can smell it from here. But I think the epidendrum, unfortunately, you can see some of the lower blooms are starting to go now, but nonetheless all of the spikes have got many buds to come, and the plant is strong and healthy and has grown well, so it's a good example of that particular plant. And quite honestly, the fact that it is semi-perpetual, in other words after its initial blooming, these pom-pom heads, it still pushes up more and more buds. So given that, I might be able to get away with trimming off those blooms at the bottom of the pom-pom, the first ones to go over, and still get away with that one. So I might take that one along. So see how we go. Not much else in that sort of state really. This orchid that got a first at the Bournemouth show has dropped 2 blooms, and what's left doesn't look bad. So I just don't know what this one's going to do over the next few days. The fact that a few blooms dropped and the others have stayed there makes me think they're going to go soon, but at the moment they don't look bad. And given the number of blooms still left, and again it's a good plant, good clean leaves, it's, you know, it's grown well over the last couple of years, however long I've had it, so you know. But you get disappointments. That is supposed to be Victoria Reginiae. Well, it's not. Somebody sold me a duff one. Now, these blooms are still attractive, but they're not what I paid for. And they're not what I've been waiting for ages to see bloom. I wanted that deep, rich purple colour. That's what I've been waiting for, and that turned up pink. So it isn't what it was supposed to be. It's growing well. The canes it pushed on last year have pushed on well. There's kikis coming out in quite a few places. But that immediately goes on the to-go list because it's not what I bought. And I'll be looking out for the proper thing. And I won't buy it again until I find one that's in bloom that I can guarantee is the right flipping thing. That's a nuisance. But things like that are sent to try us, and then we're always found guilty. Yeah, so just a quick sort of chat about things I wish I'd done earlier in life. Not too many things I hope to do, but I hope at the point when I need to get out of this house I can work something out. Excuse me, fog up just got me. I hope I can work something out that I get to keep quite a few of my orchids. But that will be the perfect rationalisation time because my choice will be taken away. Anyway, I'll have to work on that when it happens. That's the only way to think of that. So, yeah, I'll see you next time, and think about things that you'd like to change and concentrate on those that you can. And those things that you just cannot change due to where you live or funds or various restrictions that life puts on us, if you can't change it, is it really worth worrying about? Worry about the things you can change. And let the rest just go by the wayside and have a carefree life, or as close as you can get. There's another goal, a carefree life. Well, I don't think any of us have that, but we can get close by doing a bit of work at it and thinking about the things that please us the most. Concentrate on those. Things that we don't like doing, well, sometimes they're unavoidable. Well, keep it short. Move on to the things you do enjoy. Or split them up. Do a bit of each, so that, you know, the things that you don't like doing are in between the things you do like doing. Or you could go the other way and get everything you don't like doing done all at once and leave loads of time for the things you do like doing. I keep looking at this brassica. It's not annoying me yet, but given that it bloomed on the previous bulb, that is that big, and this bulb is quite a bit bigger, I was expecting to see a spike by now. Come on! It's slacking. It will bloom, I'm confident of that. There's no doubt about that. It's just when. And given the spike on that last time was stunning, and as a young plant I wasn't even expecting it. I'm expecting that spike to be at least as good. So spidery nonsense down the line, but it's a fair way off yet. Yeah. Okay, just a chat, and I may start up some other videos, and sort of I end up with videos half done, finish them off at another day and things like that, and they lurk in the background until they're ready to post. But yeah, a little bit of sunlight catching that. Gorgeous blooms those are. A lot of Cattleyas have quite plain markings, but that's got markings everywhere, even on the sepals. It's got delicate marking. Petals are gradated from very pale right up to this deep colour. Lovely sort of tessellated type markings, lovely gold in the lip. Yeah. Some blooms are just extra special, and some are just okay. Well, if they're just okay, and you're running out of space, which are the ones to give to friends or sell on or get rid of for your orchid society? Decision's quite easy, really. But behind the pretty blooms are the plant. Yeah? Good, strong, healthy plants, less work, less worry, more enjoyment. Struggling plants, sickies, you know, rescues and all stuff like that are an element of hassle. Not getting them in the first place helps, but that requires knowledge that when I got quite a few of those I didn't have. Well, I have now, so I won't do it again, but I'm still stuck with quite a few of them. I'm working on it. See you next time.